Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Revolutionary War Rarities, Season 3. It is Fright Night on Revolutionary War Rarities. This is our Halloween special, and we are with, yet again, a very special guest. This is Mr. Zach Distel. He is the curator for the Sons of the American Revolution in Louisville, Kentucky. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're glad you're here, Zach. So the title of this episode is more than just Fright Night. It's more than just the Halloween special. It is Medical Implements of the American Revolutionary era. And to say the least, it's medieval, wouldn't you say?
Yes, that's actually a very good way to look at it. At this era, during the American Revolution, we're really kind of transitioning into more modern medical practices as we would think of today. But people who were studying medicine at that time were still studying what were called the four humors,
Right.
which goes all the way back to ancient Greece, but is really institutionalized, in the medieval era. And that's still like what they were working with. So I'm glad to be living in the 21st century.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention, if you're a little squeamish when it comes to medical practices or some of the medical implements, which we'll be discussing here now, I would recommend that you may want to skip this particular episode. That's why we're calling it Fright Night on Revolutionary War Rarities. So, with that, you have been warned. Stop now if you're not interested in learning a little bit more about some things that you may or may not be interested in learning about. But once again, these are medical implements that will go into a museum that the Sons of the American Revolution is creating in downtown Louisville, Kentucky. Along with that museum is an education center. It's going to be a world-class museum, world-class education center. The museum will be here physically located in Louisville, Kentucky on Main Street on Museum Row. But the education center will be accessible wherever you are in the world. And there's a lot of things that we have planned that will be implemented in the very near future. So with that, let's jump in. Talk to us about medical practices of the American Revolution and how we are thankful to be alive today.
Yeah. So as we were saying, that their medical practice and their theory and their knowledge was really based on that late medieval approach to medicine. But we are going through a period of transition, and it's important to remember that they don't have germ theory. They don't understand what diseases are like on a scientific level. They kind of have basic understandings. But kind of starting over here on this end, this is actually a set of pocket scales. So these are something that would be typical for anyone from a doctor to a merchant to carry. So these were often used for exchanging currencies. Different types of currencies, Dutch currency, Spanish currency, French currency, English currency, and it just goes on. And so they're using this to exchange money, but they're also using it to measure out medicines. They do have, different types of elixirs, powders, things like that, and they know that in certain measurements for, sizes of a person, that they will have, a desired effect. Lots of side effects. A popular treatment in that era is mercury, which does produce some immediate results for treating symptoms, but has longer-term, side effects as we know today. So something like this, you're really using to measure out your medicine. And this is a mortar and pestle, so this is something that you're using, you're crushing up to make those different medicines. Those are often coming from herbs, things like that. There's a lot of knowledge in North America at this time. You have enslaved Africans in this society. They're bringing their medical knowledge from the African continent. You have Native Americans who have, their own approaches to medicine. And then you have Europeans coming over. So you have a lot of different approaches to medicine mixing together, and a lot of those have to do with herbs and elixirs, often things like tonics.
Now, were these commonly made from iron at that time? Because the ones that I've seen today are more pottery based, it seems like.
Yeah, today they are. So something like this, if you are an apothecary and you're you're working every day and you're making different medicines, you're going to want to have an iron, or more ideally, you'd have a brass one. So you'll find brass ones from the period that will actually have the owner's initials or name on it and the year that it was made. Typically, if you go to like a farmhouse, something like that, where you're using your mortar and pestle for cooking, you're going to find a wooden one.
Okay. Now, we call this Fright Night, and I know that we're moving towards the more frightening things
Yes.
at this point. We did an episode in Season 1 called Therapeutic Phlebotomy, which was bleeding of people, right? Which was fairly common. That's one of the things that they believe could have actually killed George Washington, was they just bled him to death in an attempt to treat the illness that he suffered from at that point.
Yes.
So I'm looking at something that looks awfully familiar to me. Talk to me about the...
Yeah, so really this and all of these down here are the types of implements that would have been used in that period for bleeding someone. Some of these are difficult to date, so I can't tell you definitively that they're from the Revolutionary War era, but they are appropriate in material and style to have been in use at that time. So you would really start using something like this. These are actually still used today. You'll see Olympic swimmers use these. You'd place it on the part of the body that you're going to bleed, and you would heat it with a candle. And what that would do is it would draw the blood to the surface, and it would make your blood vessels really pop out so they're easier to see. So then once your blood vessels are popped out, you would place someone's arm, or wherever you're taking the blood from, you'd lay it across here like this, and you would catch the blood in here. And then you have a couple different ways to, open that artery and start bleeding them. This is a manual phleem, so this is really just some razor blades on here.
Phleem?
Yeah, phleem.
P-H?
F-L-E-A-M.
F-L-E-A-M.
Yeah,
okay.
It's kind of an older word. So these are just little razor blades, and, the finer the cut you're making in someone's arm, the easier it is to close it up when you're done. And they would take a prescribed amount of blood, so to speak. So this is what you'd be using to take it out. And then, quick side note too, this is the type of stuff too, when they start doing smallpox inoculations, they'd be using little blades like this too to kind of open your skin, scrape some smallpox pus out of another person,
and then rub it into
stick it into your wound.
Right.
So they'd be using little razor blades like this. So that's a manual type phleem. This is another type of phleem. This one's actually spring-loaded. So you cock it like this, so you can see this little blade has come over. Get my hand out of the way so y'all can see. And you would lay it flat on someone's skin this way.
Yep.
On the back here, you've got a little trigger, and you can...
Ooh.
That's going to shoot down into your skin, so you do that a couple times. Usually you'd want to open up a vein in 2 or 3 spots to really get the blood flowing. You really want to get somebody bleeding well. This is another type of phleem. So we know that this one actually probably dates to before the American Revolution because it's square. As you get to the end of the 18th century, these become octagonal in shape.
This looks like a coffee grinder from the top.
Well, you would probably prefer that it was if it's being used on you. So I'm going to do this really slowly to cock it, but you can see there's actually all of those things sticking up are razor blades, and you would...
Is that 20? That's got to be 15 or 20 blades.
You've got about 15 there.
Wow.
So you cock it, and once again, you lay it flat on someone's skin, and all those razor blades flip around, and you're very quickly... someone's going to be bleeding quite profusely at that point. But once again, they would use those really sharp razor blades because then it's easy to just push a rag on there and stop them from bleeding when you've taken enough. Okay.
And it looks like we've got 2 more nasty-looking medical implements over here.
Yeah, so, we talked a little bit earlier about mercury being a preferred medicine to apply. It's not a syringe, so this is not for giving hypodermic injections. It's really just got an end on here, but this is for adding or removing fluid. So if you have an infection, or if you have an ear infection, or you have a buildup of fluid somewhere in your body, you could use this. There's a plunger in here, just like a modern syringe today. That plunger on the inside is actually just a piece of leather, so it's not going to work quite as well, but you could use it to extract fluids, or these were typically used for men who had gotten syphilis. They would give a urethral application of mercury, which to an extent did work because you're killing all of the tissue. We actually know that these were in use. There was an almost identical implement found on the Queen Anne's Revenge, which sunk in the 1730s, Blackbeard ship,
right,
off the coast of South Carolina. We believe Blackbeard actually probably had syphilis and was being treated.
I read somewhere that there were more people affected by syphilis than there were the Black Plague. You think about the number of people that died from the Black Plague in Europe. That's an amazing number. And I'm not exactly sure what that number is, but it's significant. I know.
Yeah, even into the early 19th or the early 20th century, in the United States, so the early 19...
Okay, so what is this?
Yeah, so down here on the end, this is called a clyster. This is actually an 18th century enema. So once again, you can see you have a contoured tip on here for comfort, so to speak, and you have a plunger on the inside for giving applications. And once again, a popular remedy for indigestion, things like that, was applications of mercury. A little bit after the Revolution, but on the Lewis and Clark expedition, they're eating a pretty exclusively meat diet. They're hunting along the way, and they were taking what were called Dr. Thunderclapper's pills, which were just large mercury sedatives. And so if you didn't have a clyster, you would just have a sedative. But these would be applied, and it would help relieve constipation.
Wow. Wow. I am thankful that I live in the 21st century.
I am as well.
Yeah. Well, I think these are great examples of how the medical practice has advanced over the years, right? Humorism, or the balance of fluids, played a role with tools like this, right?
Yeah.
But once not the theory, but the medicines were understood, or the medical practice understood that germs were a thing, the medical practice has evolved to the point where we do have painkillers now. We don't have to have, I know John Adams' daughter had some very painful surgery when she was suffering from, I believe, breast cancer.
Yeah, she did. She had breast cancer, and she had a double mastectomy in the early 19th century. And so this is a daughter of a U.S. president, and she is receiving medical advice from Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was one of the leading medical minds of the era. And her mastectomy was done with a kitchen spatula, a brazier, and some razor blades.
Wow.
So that's one of the few examples we know of. So, and that's a person from an elite American family. So you can imagine the type of treatment, the everyday person is getting in that era.
Wow. Well, Zach, thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you for exposing us to all of this. Once again, these are artifacts that are owned by the Sons of the American Revolution, located in Louisville, Kentucky. Be aware that the museum is coming your way on Museum Row in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think these are, yet again, another great example of where change is not a bad thing, right?
Agreed.
My nature is that I don't like things to change, right? I'm comfortable. I establish levels of comfort with various things. I believe that dislike of change would have become very much a like of change had I suffered from some of these treatments back in the day. So, and that, my friends, is another Revolutionary War rarity. My name is Jim Griffith, and this is
Zach Distel.
And we appreciate you being here with us today. Please join us again in 2 weeks for the next episode of Revolutionary War Rarities. Happy Halloween, everyone. This has been a production of the National Society, Sons of the American Revolution, www.sar.org.